Have you ever felt like you're losing your mind? Like the person you once were has disappeared, replaced by someone you barely recognize? Someone anxious, confused, and constantly walking on eggshells. If you see yourself in what I just described, then I want you to know something important. You're not crazy. You're not overreacting. And what you're experiencing has a neurobiological explanation. Today, I'm talking about something that you may not be aware of, and that's how this particular type of psychological abuse literally changes your brain chemistry and neural pathways. This isn't just emotional pain. It's a physiological rewiring that explains why you can't just leave or just get over it. And understanding this hidden mechanism was the key that finally helped me escape the prison of my own altered mind. I'm Grace Channing. I'm the author of Love Crimes, a book that I wrote about my experience in a toxic relationship. And before I explain the science, let me share a moment from my own journey. 3 years into my relationship with my narcissistic ex, I found myself sitting in my car in a grocery store parking lot, having a full-blown panic attack because I couldn't remember all of the items on the shopping list, which I had left on the kitchen counter. I sat there, hyperventilating and genuinely terrified of the silent treatment, the subtle put-downs, and the cold shoulder that would follow if I forgot any item on that list. In that moment, I couldn't even recognize myself. The confident, decisive woman that I once was had been replaced by someone who had crippling anxiety over leaving home without the list. What I didn't understand then was that my brain had been altered by years of unpredictable punishment and reward, gaslighting, and emotional manipulation. I didn't know it then, but I was experiencing the neurobiological consequences of narcissistic abuse. When most people talk about narcissistic abuse, they focus on the behaviors, the love bombing, the devaluation, the discard. But what's happening beneath the surface in your nervous system and brain explains why this form of abuse is so devastating and so difficult to escape. Let me break this down. What's actually happening to your brain when you're in a relationship with a narcissist? First, there's a stress hormone called cortisol. Under normal circumstances, cortisol rises and falls throughout the day. But when you're living with constant unpredictability and emotional abuse, the body begins producing excessive amounts of cortisol. This literally shrinks the hippocampus, the part of your brain responsible for memory and emotional regulation. This explains why so many victims report feeling foggy, forgetful, and emotionally unstable. It's not weakness. It's a physiological response to psychological terrorism. Your brain's reward system becomes hijacked through a process similar to addiction. The intermittent reinforcement that narcissists provide, rare moments of approval or affection, sandwiched between criticism and coldness, triggers dopamine spikes that create a powerful trauma bond. This isn't just an emotional attachment. It's a biochemical dependency that mirrors the brain patterns seen in drug addiction. That's why you can logically know that the relationship is destroying you, but still feel desperate to return to it. What makes this particularly cruel is how the trauma begins to manifest physically. The constant state of fight or flight doesn't just affect your mind, it compromises your entire immune system. I learned this the hardest way possible. After years of emotional and psychological abuse, my body finally gave out. What started as persistent fatigue and digestive issues culminated into a devastating diagnosis: leukemia. I remember sitting in the sterile doctor's office hearing the words, "You have blood cancer," and experiencing a strange moment of clarity. My body was literally shutting down under the weight of the stress and trauma. The connection between my toxic relationship and my physical collapse became undeniable. Medical research has actually confirmed this link. Studies show that chronic stress from psychological abuse increases inflammatory markers in the blood and suppresses immune function. My oncologist never asked about my home life. No one connected the dots between the psychological warfare I was enduring and my failing body. But I knew, deep down, I knew they were linked. Here's what almost no one talks about. Just as your brain can be rewired by trauma, it can also be rewired for healing. My hope is that you fully understand this environment before you get sick. This concept is called neuroplasticity, your brain's ability to form new neural connections and healing pathways. And understanding this was one of the most powerful steps in my recovery, both from narcissistic abuse and from cancer. When I finally escaped my relationship, I was not only fighting cancer, but also battling the neurobiological aftermath of prolonged psychological abuse. I couldn't trust my perceptions. I jumped at small sounds. I apologized constantly. I was consistently waiting for the other shoe to drop. It took a while to shake off this hypervigilance. These weren't character flaws or weaknesses. They were my altered nervous system and my brain circuitry responding exactly as they had been trained to. Recovery meant more than just processing emotions or gaining insight into what happened in the relationship. It required deliberate, consistent efforts to create new neural pathways and calm my hyperactive stress response system. What I hope that you understand today is that what you're experiencing isn't just emotional pain. It's a physiological response to a psychological injury. Your brain and body are responding exactly as they've been trained to through prolonged exposure to narcissistic abuse. Here is why wrapping your head around this is so important. This understanding doesn't just validate your experience, it offers a roadmap to healing. Because once you've recognized that your brain has been altered by trauma, you can take specific, deliberate steps to create new neural pathways. The fog will lift. The hypervigilance will fade. Your ability to trust your perceptions will return. Not because you've simply gotten over it, but because you've engaged in the biochemical work of healing. I stand before you today not just as a survivor of narcissistic abuse and cancer, but as living proof that your brain can heal from even the most profound trauma. The person you were before the abuse hasn't been destroyed. They're still there, beneath the neural pathways created by trauma. And with the right understanding and approaches, you can find them again. If you're watching this and you recognize yourself in my words, I want you to remember this. The confusion, the self-doubt, the fear, the physical symptoms, these aren't signs of weakness or evidence that you're too sensitive. They are the natural, predictable, neurobiological consequences of psychological abuse. Your brain is doing exactly what brains do when subject to this kind of treatment. But it can be turned around when you work on awakening, recovering, and healing. Your brain will adapt. You can rewire your brain and begin to heal. This journey is not quick and it is not easy. I won't pretend it is. But understanding the physical reality of what you're experiencing is the first step towards genuine recovery. You didn't imagine the abuse. You aren't overreacting. And the physical and psychological symptoms you're experiencing are real. But most importantly, they are reversible. I have created a guided meditation that is designed to help you find a safe place in your mind to begin the healing work. I am offering it to you as a free gift. It won't cost you anything. Just click the link in the description and get started. I hope this helps you make sense of your experience in a new way. I have so much more to share with you as we move towards awakening and healing from this cruel behavior. Until then, please remember, your brain has been changed by this experience, but it can change again. Recovery isn't just possible with the right understanding and approaches. It's inevitable. Thank you for listening to my story, and if it resonates with you, consider hitting the subscribe button and share it with someone who might need to hear this. Together, we can break the silence around this neurobiological reality of narcissistic abuse with the goal of living our lives with peace and joy.